All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to welcome everybody out to the American Fork City Council meeting on this January 11th, the year 2022. Our agenda has been posted in various places throughout the city, on the city website, and met all state requirements, and we'll follow the agenda as outlined. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, after which we'll have an invocation by Councilmember Barnes, and then I will conduct the roll call. If everybody please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Begin this city council meeting, we pause for a moment to acknowledge and thank thee for the many blessings that we enjoy. We are truly grateful to live in this country, to enjoy the freedoms and the opportunities and the blessings that are ours. We're grateful for the founders of this nation, for the guidance they received from me in establishing our Constitution and other early documents that guide us even today. We're grateful for all those who have fought for the attaining and the defending of our rights and our freedoms and the freedoms of other lands and other people. We're mindful of those who are currently serving in the armed forces and pray that thou will bless them, protect them, help them and their families as they serve. We're grateful for this community in which we live, for the many wonderful citizens who live here, for the employees of our city, for the opportunity to govern ourselves through a city council and a mayor. I'm grateful for the service of all who participate in helping and blessing this community. We ask, Father, that thy Spirit might be with us tonight, that we might be guided, that the decisions that will be made will be the best decisions for this community. We pray for these blessings, for the other blessings thou hast for us, and do this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. I'll now conduct the roll call. Councilmember Hunter.
Here.
Councilmember Shelton.
Here.
Councilmember Barnes.
Here.
Councilmember Carroll.
Here.
Councilmember Taylor.
Here.
Thank you. We'll now move on to item number 2, and that is our public comment period. Anybody that would like to address the mayor, the council, and our senior staff, or make any kind of a public statement, we would invite you to come forward, state your name first for the record, and then please limit your comments to 2 to 3 minutes. Seeing none, we will close the public comment period and we'll move on to the city administrator's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I have just a few things to report. Recently, our fitness center held their pass sale, the annual pass sale there at the fitness center. It was very successful. There were several new people who signed up, and that pass sale is now closing. So if you want to have an opportunity to buy a pass at the fitness center, I would suggest you do that quickly. There's an exciting addition to the fitness center. They are constructing a spin room, a new spin room. And that's under construction right now, and it will be complete within 3 to 4 weeks. And so that'll be a dedicated room for spin classes. It'll be great. Wanted to congratulate our fire department. They had a banner year. This year, the fire department responded to 4,772 calls. That is the busiest it's an amazing feat that our fire department works this hard. Just really want to thank them for all of that. But I'd like to tell our residents, let's be more careful. Let's slow down on the calls to the EMS services especially. So, but thanks to our fire department for that. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to council reports, and I'll start with Councilmember Taylor.
Yes, Mayor, just a couple of things as the new year kicks off. Our park committee has met, and we have started the process to get ready for our workshop, which will be January 27th. It's important to note that on that workshop, all who would have interest in applying for those park funds, the January 27th meeting is mandatory for you to be able to be there and get the information, very right to the point information, and allow you to have a little bit of guidance as you fill out your application to know and understand what's going to be expected. And so the group is working very hard for that, and that initial meeting we'll have a chance to announce again, but it is right now set for January 27th. And that is the only announcement I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Carroll.
Thank you. I think I will just mention that tomorrow the Chamber of Commerce is sponsoring the State of the City Luncheon, which the mayor will be speaking at, and we'll hear a report on the city as well as have an event for the chamber. That's it.
Thank you. I'll just add to that, it will be a riveting speech, by the way. All right. Councilmember Barnes.
Just good to be here. I have nothing official, but it's good to have last year out of the way. And I look forward to this year and all of the good things that will be accomplished by the citizens and residents of this community, as well as our employees and others who come from out of our city. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Shelton.
Nothing to report, Mayor.
Okay. Councilmember Hunter.
I'd just like to, as you're well aware, we have the audit we'll be discussing tonight, but I just wanted to give a shout out to that committee. We've met several times in preparation for tonight's vote, and just to really appreciate Anna. There's a ton of time that goes into that, and much of it, well, all of it lies on her shoulders, and so just want to thank her as well as Dave and James for their time. It's funny, I joked when we first met about the amount of our committee, the amount of the years of service that we have. And as I've been thinking about that, I think it's actually higher than the 60 years combined service we said, because I'm pretty sure it's like 40 and 30 between the two of them. And so it's really 70 years of combined service. So our audit committee is well established. There's one of these that is not like the other, but I'm doing my best to just kind of hang on and no, but they're very. I can't imagine anybody more qualified than our audit committee. So anyway, just a shout out to them and to Anna and all her group's time. That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you for that report. Item number 5, the mayor's report. I was kind of looking at my calendars as I go to what kind of meetings have I been in, what things have been important. And I would like to revert back. It seems like a long time ago, but it wasn't. It was just maybe 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, whatever, Christmas, and just the festive atmosphere of our city and how our staff kind of brought that to light, literally to light, in parks and other places. And I had the privilege of just riding shotgun with a member of the fire department and Santa. And this year we had a companion with Santa with the Grinch. And he was the real deal. I mean, this guy, this Grinch was put together. I mean, and he had the personality to go with the Grinch. In fact, I had so much fun watching the look on people's eyes as he threw them onions. Little kids would run to it, and then they just look at it like, "What is this?" And he was throwing out onions. But it was just so much fun. And through that journey throughout the city. It was about 2.5 hours. Boy, you really learn about the growth of the city. And when we went down on that south area of our city, boy, was it ever alive with children. and families, and you don't get that perspective. And so just with all this new growth, we have so much opportunity to welcome in new people, and they are part of our city now, the very fabric of our city. And it was just a really fun event just to be there. Nobody notices anybody but Santa. The Grinch tried to steal a little bit of thunder, but the kids only look at one person, and that's the guy, the jolly fat man, as we call him. So that was a lot of fun. But and then I appreciated just we had our swearing-in ceremony, and I felt like it was we're sworn in to be swore at, and we're prepared for that. And appreciate the support of everybody throughout the city. And that is the mayor's report. We'll now move on to the common consent agenda. Before we do that, I would just like, for the public record, I know there's not a lot of people here, but in these packets is a wealth of information that the council and the mayor prepares, staff prepares for. And so as we make these decisions, bear in mind that there's been a lot of study that's gone into these. And so we start with a very lengthy common consent agenda. We have not met due to the holidays for quite some time. And so some of this is because of that. And so we have 13 items on the common consent agenda. Is there any questions?
Mayor, I've looked over the common consent agenda and move approval.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Taylor.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Shelton.
Comment, please.
Yeah.
I did find a few things that were typos. Terry Lynn and I had visited about those. One of them was actually, should we say critical? Most of them were minor, but there was one in there that was a potential problem, so they will be
to change
fixed.
the amount from $2 or $2.50 to $2 in the work session. Where they talked about the sewer or the stormwater rates.
Okay, thank you. All right, duly noted. I guess those minutes, I'm just going to, just for procedure, they've been in. Councilman Shelton, Councilman Taylor, we're okay with the motion in a second. I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Councilmember Hunter.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Okay, item number 1 on our regular action item agenda is a review and action on a resolution supporting environmental protections for Utah Lake. We had a work session last week where we received information, and before us is a resolution. I would state that Provo has kind of begun this this movement, I would call it, where cities are weighing in on different factions of Utah Lake. Should it be developed on top of the lake? The Utah Lake Authority bill that is before us, we felt like there's some guidance that we could give the legislature. I expect other cities will probably follow suit to some degree and tailor it to maybe something that's important to them. I think the thing that, if Ken, if you'd scroll down just to right towards the last whereas, I chair the Utah Lake Commission, and so as the Utah Lake Authority bill was put into interim last year, I was a member of the governance board to bring back feedback to the lawmaker. And the one thing that was very prominent in that was that the lake bed is sovereign land of the state of Utah. And I felt it would be important for us to highlight that it needs to be insured and to be held in the jurisdiction of the state agencies and not pulled from them. And aside from that, this one is very similar to Provo's. As the council has had time to read it, is there anything that you would like to add to it? This is a living document until we actually ratify it. But if there's any comments about this or edits that you'd like to make, we can certainly do that and then sign it up or not sign it up, depending on your thoughts.
Mayor, as I read through this and as we talked about on work session, if we go back to the now therefore, item number 2, I don't know if it makes any sense. Again, I'm talking about When we talked about adding some extra teeth in this resolution, would it be inappropriate on number 2, when we talk about to ensure that regulation and decision-making remain with state agencies that are responsive to robust that rather than, exclusively by the Utah Lake Authority? Is that inappropriate language?
I had similar thoughts about this is a good document, but how do we help it maybe make its impact? That if someone read it, I could see them reading this and going, oh yeah, this law does stay with the state agency we just created.
And now here's the thing, it's existing state agencies.
I get that, but maybe that's what we need to emphasize or highlight
I would-
just a little bit
Okay.
more. I also thought about the work session, and I felt a strong sense of support for Representative Stratton's bill that's going back, that basically says, and so I'd almost rather have something that's very direct to that why should Utah Lake be treated any different than any other body of water in the state of Utah, and that we would support that bill and reverting it back to be treated like any other body of water as far as the process to go through to make sure that exchange of, I can call it one-to-one for lack of a better term, that we're getting back, and that's done by the full legislature and not some ad hoc state agency. And that was my word with the word agencies, was particularly that bill going to say, if we're going to sell that sovereign land, that needs to go to the full legislature, in my opinion, like it had previously. I don't know how to word that gracefully in here, but that was the type of teeth that I felt would be worth putting in here. That way when it landed on someone's desk, there wasn't any guesswork about at least our intent, if that's what we agreed upon.
And that's why I wanted to name that organization, and so that they would understand that the full legislature needs to be the decision body, along with the last whereas, it being sovereign. In this, we talk about, the transparent public process, collective vigilant oversight from cities, businesses, and communities, which we don't have with the Utah Lake Authority as it currently exists.
Yeah. Right now, the bill has not been released. We're still waiting on that. We thought we would have it in our hands well over a month ago.
And I think there's two different bills, right?
There is,
There's one
you're
that's-
absolutely right.
And that's where I almost felt like, does there need to be two different resolutions that could be very direct and to the point, that just says, hey, we're supportive of Utah Lake being treated the same as any other body of water in the state of Utah. And then we do another resolution that's directed right at the Utah Lake Authority, that could really be direct. That way, I'm just thinking if I was a lobbyist or if I was someone trying to garner support, it'd be nice to have something clear and direct. And I'd even suggest putting it on a 1-page versus a 2-page paper that just says, here's American Fork's position. I know that's a bold step, but I don't know if that's what we were looking for. For me, that's what I would like to go towards, but just one.
I agree. I want it to be strong. I want it to be questionless. Wow, so this is how American Fork feels, because clearly we're one of the larger entities with, say in this. I don't know. This is what I wanted from the beginning, was to just stand up and say, no, this is how this needs to be conducted. It's no different, regardless of how, efforts to change that.
So let me ask you this then, would you like to smith this a little bit and come back in 2 more weeks with one that's more directed towards, that's separate, that would be a bit more directed towards 272, which is that House bill that passed in like 2018, I think, if I remember right? Or do you want to add it to this? Just give me some direction here.
So I would prefer to have something in there that's conceptual and not directed towards a specific bill, considering we haven't seen the specific bills yet. And if there's something that's happening in the legislature imminently, it would be great to go on that bandwagon, but I don't want to maybe address that right now. But conceptually, we already know we want to be against the idea of a small group of people making decisions for the lake. So if there's something that we can put in that would convey that without referencing any sort of bills,
I
I
agree.
think that would be the best option.
If that's the case, then I'd suggest that we still take the next 2 weeks, get with Representative Stratton and see if a resolution of, that's a little more direct would be helpful. Because I think that's probably the biggest threat that I see right now, is that it's treated different than any other body of water that's out there. And so for me, I feel like that's the first step, but that's
Yeah, I
my
just
opinion.
feel like instead of referencing that bill at all, just because the bills morph and change all the way through, I say you just stick a line in the sand, like this is what we want, regardless of what the bills say now or in the future.
Sure, and I just hope that what we have here clearly states that line in the
Yeah,
sand.
I think we
worry
can
this
do
is
that.
a little too
Yeah, I
vague,
think we can
the way
add
that it's
more.
written now.
Right. Can we add that
Mhm.
in, without necessarily taking 2 weeks to get there?
Yeah, when, session's already started, right?
No, it starts, yeah, I think the 18th,
The 18th, that's right, it is the 18th.
okay.
Um,
I'm not sure what that body is called. I don't know if we have to reference it or if we just say that it goes back, that any
special
decisions
session-
based
session
upon,
has to-
on sovereign land, that those decisions are brought forward to the entire legislature.
Well, and again, I'm okay maybe doing something more vague if we're gonna get with Representative Stratton, and if he feels like that would be helpful to have a bold resolution from us, then being open to coming back in 2 weeks with one more directive that's worked in collaboration with him. I think his insights would be critical to see what he's done and what lobbying he's tried to do to get the votes that's needed, so.
And I wouldn't suggest we do something vague. I don't want something vague. I want it to be specific, but not directed towards a specific bill that hasn't yet been defined.
And maybe, wrong word of vague, but maybe
Okay.
not as strong as Clark and I maybe had intended, is what I'm saying. I'm open to doing.
Okay.
Um,
I mean, I think that you can have a conceptually strong point of view, like this is what we want, right,
Okay.
in this.
I would suggest maybe we put the language together. I would like it to be, I think it would be cool to have a special session on Tuesday with our work session and maybe pass something then. I think it would be great to get with Mr. Stratton and go over that. I just really, the language that I want in there does not depend on what bills. I want to, you talk about this treated like every other body of water. I want us to be aware, I want us to be aggressive, and I want us to be on the forefront of saying, no, it can't happen the way it almost, we can't say that, but I really want to put a stake in the ground with this. And it doesn't matter which bill or which resolution is coming before us. I want to state this regardless of what happens regarding Utah Lake. So I would be in favor of getting something ready that we could review over the weekend if there's time for that, and have it ready for work session.
Okay. And having it on a single document that just kind of is all-encompassing.
Yeah, I get worried sometimes, all the whereases, to be honest with you. I get lost in that. I think that you could probably condense some of those down and bring them together. It's good to give a little bit of background, but I think to say, this is what we want, I think a one-pager typically, I don't know, Clark has the marketing background. What would you say, Clark? Is it?
I don't know how much marketing's got to do with this as much as, I like someone pointing at me like I'm some type of authority. Let me pause for a moment. I think, more concise is always going to be better. As long as the key points are emphasized and brought out, I think that's.
Okay.
And I think that the therefores determine what the whereases are, right? So you almost start backwards and say, this is what we're stating, and so here's the whereases that are supporting the therefores.
Okay. All right, I like that idea. I'm very supportive of that, and I think that we could hold a special session and pass this on Tuesday, but we'll have the work session prior to hammer out the language. What I might do is just invite you all to, I'm going to ask Councilman Sheldon, if you just kind of take a lead on and work with me on bringing it to maybe a little more concise area, and then we'll bring that, and then we'll hammer it out, and then we'll be prepared and we'll have the special session right after, and we'll have a singular item.
So do we need to table this? Is that
Yes.
the motion? So Mayor, I would move that we table this agenda item in preparation for a Tuesday special session.
Okay. I have a motion by Councilmember Taylor,
Second.
second by Councilmember Shelton. I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Hunter. Aye. Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, item number 2 is presentation and acceptance of the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2021, audited annual financial statement. Anna, I'll just invite you to maybe preface this, and then if you would introduce our, I don't know what we would call him, our audit director. Member from last year.
The city is required to complete an audit, present financial statements to the council. We've done so this year. John Hatterley from Larson and Company, he's partner with that firm, is here to present and answer any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Mayor and Council, for letting me just take a couple of minutes. Like I said, I'm John Hatterley. I'm from Larson and Company. I'm a partner there. I want to be brief. I don't need to have a full agenda. Just wanted to go over our opinion on the financial statements. Like Anna said, we completed the audit, and Anna has completed the annual comprehensive financial report. Everything's been submitted to the state auditor's office as well as the federal government for your single audit this year. I believe you all have an electronic copy. If you do have questions, you read through it, feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'd love to talk to our clients and answer questions. Our opinion on the financial statements is an unqualified or unmodified opinion. That's a clean opinion. I don't know why accounts have to be backwards when we unqualify something when it's actually good, but it is what it is. Read the audit report. The second page of the audit report kind of defines what falls under our opinion and what does not fall under our opinion. There are certain sections in the financial statements that don't fall under our opinion, but they're included with the financial statements to give them more readability and understandability. If you don't like getting lost in the numbers, a good place to start is the management's discussion analysis, which always follows the audit report. It's kind of a Reader's Digest version of what's in the financial statements. It's more dialogue rather than just raw numbers. So it's got comparative data to prior years, so you can see kind of where the city is compared to last year. So that's a good place to read and kind of get a basic understanding. The very last section of the annual comprehensive financial report, sorry, they changed the name of it, so I have to get it in my mind, the new acronym. We actually issue 3 other reports as part of your financial statements. One of them is a report that we issue because we did your audit in accordance with government auditing standards. There are certain procedures that we perform differently than we do in a normal for-profit business or a nonprofit. So there's that report, and it talks about us looking at your internal controls. Not that we give an opinion, but we do look at your controls to make sure, A, that they're in place and you actually have controls, and B, they're being followed. Those are 2 critical parts of our audit when we assess risk, is looking at internal controls and walkthroughs. The next report we issue is for the state auditor. We look at certain areas that they require for us to look at and test compliance against Utah State Code. There was nothing major that we found that we would have to report as far as a finding, so our opinion on your compliance is also an unmodified or unqualified opinion. There is a small budget finding, and you can see that in the management letter. There were three funds that were over budget, and I really have to preface it because it used to be that the state auditor required if it was $1 over budget, then they expected a finding, and they kind of backed off on that because we kind of said, look, we understand that things happen and mistakes happen. So now we determine materiality for every fund. And so the 3 funds that were over, it was over a material amount for that fund, even though it may have been a very small amount. I know one of the funds was the redevelopment, I can't remember what the full title is, but it wasn't over by very far. However, materiality was such a low number that number became material. So our recommendation is just to make sure that near the end of the year, You go through each and every fund and look at your expenditures to your budget. If there's areas that are close, just give yourself a little bit of a cushion and amend the budget to take care of those. Because under Utah State Code, it is against state code to really spend more than you appropriately budgeted for and that the public's approved. The last report that we issued is for the federal government. It's a uniform guidance report or a single audit report. Because of the CARES money, you exceeded the $750,000 threshold of federal money that you spent. Therefore, we had to specifically test that grant and how you spent that grant. And the very last page of the PDF will have the results of our single audit. There were no findings that we were required to report as far as the coronavirus funds go. That was the major program this year. So, like I said, that's all been submitted to the federal government. If they do have questions, then I'm sure that they'll email us or they'll email Anna and we'll address that situation. I don't know if anybody has any questions on if you've reviewed anything or questions for me.
Just make a comment. It's awesome. I love it. Over the last 10 years being on the council, I continue to see these improve with greater transparency, and it's awesome. A lot of hard work goes into it, and for geeks like me, this is like something that you like to stay up till 2 in the morning looking through and digesting and reading. So really appreciate it. And Larson and Company does a great job. Sit on a few other boards. Today's my third one going through one of these. So 2 in the private sector, now 1 in the public. A little bit different when you do government accounting versus private sector. But one question I did have is on page 55 when we get into the custodial credit risk. It's one that's popping up quite a bit as of late. Lots of entities are flush with cash after the trillions of dollars that were paid out. And so it's probably a good time to take an assessment of that custodial risk. And I went back and looked at our previous balances, ranged anywhere between 1 to 2 million that we had sitting in a bank. And right now, I mean, obviously this is at the end of the year, so it's a snapshot in time, but it looks like we have about 15 million sitting in the bank. And of that, 14 million is not insured. And so I was just wondering if that was for a large payment that was coming up. Do we still have that large balance sitting in that same custodian, or would it make sense to diverse some of that out to limit that custodial risk?
That was more of a point in time. Right now, our custodial balance is about 2 to 3 million. And we have engaged an investment advisory firm, so we're putting money into money markets, long-term treasury type investments, so we settle that.
Okay, and that was kind of my other question too, that looked over. The highest I've ever seen the investment fund was at 79, and I think part of that's probably the 30 million that came in, or 20 million for the water bond, and you got the 8 million of the other bond that's there. So I understand keeping that in the Utah Treasurers Fund, but it seems like we've met quite a bit with this investment group over the course of the last 4 years, but it doesn't seem as if we've done any investing yet, at least according to as of June 30th. I didn't know if that's something we're looking to do.
So we started investing probably about September of 2021.
Okay.
And we've been putting about $5.5 million in investments every month until we drive down the custodial level.
Gotcha. And what's the target that we're going to have there in that PTF fund? Okay. I think it'd be helpful just to see the investment policy statement, kind of knowing those different accounts, just saying, hey, here's our target of how much we want to have in the investment side, here's how much is in the PTF, and then here's how much in cash.
We have a state treasurer's report due at the end of the month, which we can present to council.
Okay, that'd be awesome. And then again, just the investment policy statement, I think that's key with the rising interest rates, inflation. It's a very unique time to be managing cash. So
we're actively looking at it.
Yeah, okay, awesome. Thanks.
Okay, good questions. All right,
If I could give a quick recommendation, I know the PTIF was kind of set up for people to invest, and that's where everybody stuck their money. But it's not a true investment, and I've argued with the state auditors, and they keep coming back and saying, yes, it's an investment. And
It's not registered with the SEC.
My response to that is, if you put in $1 million and they adjust for the rate every 6 months, and if it goes to 1.5, so now you have 1.5 million, if you go to pull that money out, you're not gonna get 1.5 million, you're gonna get $1 million. So it's not a true investment, it's more of a glorified savings account. So, and we talked Anna too, but I would recommend utilizing a different type of an investment, especially if you're gonna hold cash for a long period of time, because you're not gonna get the returns you would, like you would, out of the PPIF like you would in a traditional investment.
I think I looked at the yield, it was 0.3.
Yeah.
So I think you can get the same out of a CD pretty much right now. So, yeah, totally agree.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to be key in building that into our investment policy statement, is saying, hey, here's how we're going to allocate what percentages where, dependent upon the needs of the city and the 5-year budget outlook.
Yeah, and we have connections with multiple people, so if there are questions that, feel free to reach out and we can put you in contact and kind of help things move along. If there's not any other questions, I just want to give a shout out to Anna and her team. She does a great job. I don't know if you guys know, but she puts the whole annual comprehensive financial report together. And anytime I have a client do that, sometimes we'll assist in the financial statement drafting, but we can't do the entire financial report. And for her kind of stepping into her role and taking over and really getting this done and getting it done timely is really good. And when I had review notes, I only had a few review notes for her, so just compliment them when you can. Don't compliment too much, but they really do a good job, and you should appreciate the staff that you do have in place. So
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? All right, we all echo this, Anna. Thank you so much for all that you do. Okay, if there's no other questions,
Mayor, I'd move to approve the comprehensive annual financial report fiscal year ended June 30th, 2021, and the communication with the government letter. Is that the proper way to word that?
Governance.
Governance. Oh,
Mayor.
governance.
Mayor, I'll second.
okay.
Council, could we change that to accept the report?
I didn't know. I took a shot. Well, accept.
Okay.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Taylor, second by Councilmember Hunter. And I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor,
Aye.
Councilmember Hunter,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Again, thank you, sir. Appreciate you being here.
Good job, Anna.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you.
Now move on to item number 3, review and action on acceptance of transfer of utilities from CK Farms, Terracon Communities Phase 2 development to the city. Thank you for coming forward, Scott.
Mr. Mayor, I'll ask Sherilyn to also help me if there's any important details, because I'm going to be brief. This is an item, this subdivision has been done for quite some time. There were quite a few issues with ownership, with easements, with bond releases, with some infrastructure troubles, things that I could probably go on for quite a while and give you the full history. But things have been resolved to our satisfaction now, bottom line is. The infrastructure issues have been fixed. This is one of the lingering items that needed to take place for us to be able to close this subdivision out, was actually transferring these utilities to us. They were always envisioned to be such, but they had been written in the Platte as private. Again, kind of a long story behind there. But they do belong in the city, and we feel this is the right thing to do to bring this to conclusion. So unless there's any more details, I'll leave it at that. I didn't see the stink eye from her, so that's good.
Unless there's any other questions about it, you summarized it.
Be happy to answer any questions you may have, but we recommend.
So this is a brand new construction, or is it already existing and now we're taking over the existing infrastructure?
So it's relatively new, and by that I mean in the last couple of years. So the original work has been done a couple of years. But again, a lot of history, some of the infrastructure was subpar, had to be ripped out and replaced. So that has now been done.
I think we passed an ordinance once upon a time saying, hey, if we're going to accept any private infrastructure, that it's got to meet a certain test. did that meet that, or is this an exception to that ordinance?
It does meet it now. It meets all public standards now.
And I would just add, this was built entirely, as Scott said, it was intended for this to be a public facility, at least as far as, my understanding is that's what staff was believing at the time, and this predated Scott when this plat came through. The infrastructure was built, inspected, everything was to code for public infrastructure. For some reason, there was a note on the plat that identified it as private infrastructure, but that the city was going to be responsible for all of the testing and maintenance of it. I don't know why that was the case, but it was. We caught it.
Because the city
when
likes those
Rebecca
kind of
took over.
agreements, it seems like on a regular
It
basis.
was written very strangely, and what Chairman meant to say is it was BS before Scott, in case you got BS meant something else.
With that, oh, go ahead.
I think it's really summed up in the last sentence there. All of the utilities have been installed and inspected per city standards and are ready for acceptance by the city.
Correct.
And that, to me, says we've done our normal process that we would have done on everything else.
Correct. It took a while to get there, Councilman, it did, and there were some things that had to be replaced.
There's nothing wrong with taking time to make sure things are done correctly, because a lot of that stuff's going to outlast me here on this earth. Maybe not these two, but for sure me. So, do you want to make the motion? You started.
I was just gonna say, I'll make it, unless there's other questions, I'll make a motion to accept the transfer of utilities from CK Farms, Terracon Communities, Phase 2 development, and authorize the mayor to sign the dedication of water line.
Second it.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Shelton, second by Councilmember Barnes, and I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Shelton?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye.
Councilmember Hunter?
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes?
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll?
Aye.
Item number 4 is a review and action on a banking agreement for groundwater rights with Christian Lundahl for 20.76 acre feet of water. Any questions?
No
It's
questions, I'll move, oh,
It's all straightforward, just like everything we've done with water, right? Okay.
yeah. I will move to approve the water banking agreement with Christian Lundahl for 20.76 acres feet of groundwater rights, and authorize the city to sign the agreement.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Carroll, second by Councilmember Taylor. I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Barnes?
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll?
Aye.
Councilmember Hunter?
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye.
Okay, items 5A, review and action on an ordinance approving the final plat for CK Farm Terracon Communities Phase 1, first amended plat located at approximately 360 South, 600 East in the PC Planned Community Zone. Any questions? Patrick, get on up here. Have we had Patrick in this mic before?
We have not. This is the first time.
This is a debut.
Mr.
Everyone. These are all items that were dealt with prior to when I started here. I do have some comments on them though, if you have questions, but they're simple, just housekeeping items. So the first one was previously approved with one lot less. That was there for a retention issue. All this is just adding one more lot. It's really a technical correction, but it has to come before the council for that. So it's just the inclusion of additional lot.
That's a long motion for just adding one lot, it seems to me.
Yeah, it's something pretty minor, but it is something.
It's a huge motion. I'd like to go ahead and make it, but I'm not going to do it in one breath, Clark. I'm not even going to try.
Do your best, Ken.
Move to adopt the ordinance approving the CK Farms Terracon Communities Phase 1 First Amendment plat located at approximately 360 South, 600 East in the PC Planned Community Zone, and to authorize the mayor and city council to sign the plat and accept the dedications with Instructions to the city recorder to withhold recording of the plat subject to all conditions identified in the public record associated with the December 8th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Barnes, second by Councilmember Taylor, and I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor,
Aye.
Councilmember Hunter.
Aye.
All right.
I wanted to do it in an Irish accent, but I couldn't do it.
5B is review and action on an ordinance approving the final plats of AF Crossing Plat E1 located at approximately 950 South, 900 West in the PR3 planned residential zone.
Same situation, right,
Yeah,
Patrick
so
Warehouse?
5B, C, and D are just their land adjustments with neighboring properties. There's no impact on the number of lots. It's just another evening item.
Okay, then Mayor, I would move to adopt the ordinance approving the final plat for AF Crossing Plat E1 located at approximately 950 South, 900 West in the PR30 planned residential zone, and to authorize the mayor and city council to sign the plat and accept the dedications with instructions to the city recorder to withhold recording of the plat subject to all conditions identified in the public record associated with the December 8th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting.
No second.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Taylor, second by Councilmember Carroll, and I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Hunter,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Okay, 5C is review and action on an ordinance approving the final plat for AF Crossing, Plat E2, located at approximately 950 South, 1000 West in the PR3 planned residential zone.
Mayor, I'd move to approve the ordinance approving the final plat for AF Crossing Plat E2 located at approximately 950 South, 1000 West in the PR 3.0 planned residential zone, and to authorize the mayor and city council to sign the plat and accept the dedications with the instruction to the city recorder to withhold recording of this plat subject to all conditions identified on the public record associated with the December 8th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting.
A motion by Councilmember Taylor,
I'll second.
second by Councilmember Hunter. I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Hunter,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Oi.
No, not even close.
No, it was.
No,
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 close. Orland. Patty, what do you think? Oh, we there? We're darn close. I already did.
Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
You haven't seen this guy Santa Claus. He's got a pretty good acting.
Good North Pole accent.
Okay, item 5D is a review and action of approving the final plat of AFPD South Plat A located at approximately 650 South, 900 West in the PR planned residential zone. Any questions?
Mayor, I'll move to adopt the ordinance approving the final plat for AFPD South Plat A located at approximately 650 South, 900 West in the PR3 planned residential zone, and to authorize the mayor and city council to sign the plat and accept the dedications with instructions to the city recorder to withhold recording of the plat subject to all conditions identified in the public record associated with the December 8th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting.
Motion by Councilmember Shelton,
Second.
second by Councilmember Barnes. I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor,
Aye.
Councilmember Hunter,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Item 5E, review and action on an ordinance approving the final plat and site plan for Deer Park subdivision located at approximately 9 West, and I double-checked that today, and 1100 South in the PI Plan Industrial Zone. Now, what I would like to do, I was approached before the meeting by the chairman of our planning commission that wanted to address something on this item, and so I'd like to let him speak about this. We have the applicant, we have staff. We'll just need to work something out here.
This was brought before us last month. We had a 5-1 vote. I voted against it because I brought up 5 items by reviewing the geotechnical report that I do on all the geotechnical reports as a geologist for the city. And I found 5 or 6 things that were in error in the report. They mentioned that groundwater was encountered above 8 feet below the surface, which automatically kicks in our sensitive land ordinance. They didn't really address how they're going to make it work with the sensitive land ordinance. There's also a site-specific seismic response analysis in section 5.10.3 of the report. They said that there was faults under Utah Lake, which is a known fact. They didn't talk about how it was going to be a seismic response analysis with those faults that close. There was also a state listed about the pH and the sulfate content of the soil to determine what type of concrete or what kind of cement will be used in the concrete. Because depending on the chemistry of the soil, they use different kinds of concrete so the concrete stays like it's supposed to be. And they didn't come back and say that the chemistry showed that you use type 1 cement and that was okay. That's one the answer to that. There's a liquefaction problem in this area of the state. It's a state-known area of high liquefaction. They never didn't really say how they mitigate it. And we're talking about, in order for it sitting on approximately 1,000 feet of unconsolidated lake bed sediments. Liquefaction down south of the freeway in this city is a very unique problem. It's a state recognized problem. They didn't say how they mitigate it. On borehole 7, 11, 13, 14, and 15, they stopped at 5 feet. Well, 5 feet and 1,000 feet of sediments is no big deal. That's by volume. And they did find groundwater at 3.5 feet. Why did they stop at 5 feet? They never did address that. I just talked to the city engineer this afternoon, and she has not received any feedback from the applicant on why they stopped at 5 feet. She's asked repeatedly why they stopped at 5 feet. They've never given her an answer. And then last but not least, in figure 2 of the report, it shows 3 buildings on their plat. On sheet C 1.0 shows 2 buildings. So if they build 2 buildings and it fills up the plat, where are they going to put the 3rd building? The applicant in our meeting couldn't explain any of these things. They're supposed to get back to us in a timely fashion. And the motion was passed 5-1 on condition of these things being answered in a timely manner. They have not been answered in a timely manner, especially the one about where they stopped at 5 feet, which is totally ridiculous. And we probably ought to, as a sidebar, we probably ought to look at our city's sensitive land ordinance. And I personally, professionally, think we should drill a lot more holes, a lot deeper than we're doing right now.
Okay. Well, this feels like something new to me, and that is that it's passed by the Planning Commission and then there's items that need to be reconciled, and so I don't know if this is a legal question. I'm going to ask staff, but I'd like to think we could work this out here tonight and get this through. So
The reason why I bring it up is the fact that we have that come to us, we hope we're prepared when it comes to us so we can make a good decision on the information they bring to us. I feel it's unfair to the staff, especially now when we've had to replace the 2 that left and Rob Patrick in. There's so much backlog. I don't feel like we should put a whole list of conditions on an approval that they have to keep after, and they got 18 million other things to do. The applicant should come prepared to present his project, and if it passes, it passes, but it doesn't have to have 15 different applications to the approval, saying, well, if you do this, we'll approve it, if you do this, we'll approve it. That's unfair to the staff. They've got enough work to do as it is right now, just trying to catch up and keep ahead of the ball game.
okay. All right. So I'm going to call up this would be an engineering. Scott, we'll just, I think that's where we might start here. Again, I've not known so much to happen with, based upon, coming back and having a 5-1 vote and an approval process of a project. So we'll learn together here.
So, Mr. Mayor, with this item and with some of the items, that we bring before you or bring before the Planning Commission, general rule of thumb, we don't like to bring things that have really serious issues and say, please approve it to either the Planning Commission or the Council with these conditions. Very rare. In fact, we've really worked hard to get away from that. It was a past practice that never really liked. That being said, there are quite often minor, what in our professional opinion, mine, Rebecca's, Ben's, whoever, and we consult regularly on these things, that sometimes there are issues that we believe are minor enough that we can, in good conscience, bring something to the Planning Commission with a positive recommendation with that those minor issues be corrected. What defines minor? Admittedly, it's a professional judgment call. This was one where we felt that the conditions that were still there, the outstanding issues and questions, were minor enough that we could take it to the Planning Commission with a positive recommendation. So we did that. And the things that they still needed to address, the questions that they needed to, just being blunt, like sometimes I can be, I would have preferred to have had the answers that we received from the developer earlier. But we got them. We reviewed them and feel satisfied as of tonight, as of now, that the questions have been answered and what last little lingering things there are minor enough that we feel we can recommend approval to you tonight, and that this be approved, and that we'll work with the developer to answer the last few questions. Certainly, John's opinion and professional experience matter a lot to me, and so we probably need to talk a little bit more about those things, but I spoke with Rebecca just earlier today as well, and we feel confident in recommending approval to you tonight.
All right. Questions from the council?
So you're recommending approval and with the outstanding items that John has outlined tonight anyway?
Yes.
Can you give us some solace in that, in his objections then? For instance, the 3 feet down, they struck water, why did they only go 5 feet? Can you help us with that?
And unfortunately, Councilman, I probably wished I had spoken with John a little bit more detail earlier to make sure I knew all of what his concerns are. Because just, again, being honest with you, I don't review this as closely as my staff does. They review it very closely. As they reviewed it, they felt that the questions were answered and that it met code. And we, in fact, would not bring something to you that we had a lingering concern on that it didn't. So I probably can't give you a whole lot of solace, I guess, to use your word, on the details of each one. What I can commit is to make sure that I sit down with John and we look really closely at what the questions that he's bringing up tonight are. Again, because his experience I deeply respect it. But my staff believe that this meets code. And the lingering questions are minor enough that we can get them answered and they won't materially affect the design. So, and John may feel otherwise, and that's why I would like to talk to him. But I'm going to back up my staff in their reviews on this.
So I'm a little confused because I think I heard John say that he had talked to Rebecca this afternoon and she didn't have the answers, and now you're here saying you talked to her and she has the answers.
Well, I talked to her.
It's kind of like who's on first base, for those of you that remember.
And I texted her on this about 10 minutes ago.
And that was after I talked to
10
John.
minutes ago I texted Rebecca, and we've been texting back there on the phone right now.
To me, this is just not normal way of doing things. At 10 minutes before we're ready to make a decision on what I consider a fairly major project, and I'm not an engineer by any means, and I'm none of the other things, but I was raised in Bountiful on the west side by the freeway. As a kid, when we finished the basement, my job was to reach down into the hole that had been dug for the toilet and bail the water out of it. So I know a little bit about high water tables. I know what they can do because I woke up more than once and put my foot on soaking wet carpet because of high water tables. So my background says I'm very concerned about this. That's just my 2 cents worth. Not discrediting you or anybody else. but I don't like loose ends on something this big that to me has impact. I realize these buildings don't have basements and all the other things, and I think I understand a little bit about liquefaction because of the insurance business and earthquake insurance and some other things that are related to that. So for me, there's just a few too many loose ends right now still with things that we're still going to work on. Well, if we pass it, what's the motive for them to work on them? That's my question, really.
You know what, I can, agree with that. I think with some of the loose ends too, that there's, for me, and who am I, because I'm not even going to have a vote tonight, but there are some people you can look in the eye and know that are going to be taken care of. I feel confident in the credibility of this developer as well. So I think if there's a tie, I'm on a fence, and you want to work on something, and I know the developer will, then I'm comfortable with at least giving my opinion. So.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just looking at this, John, you alluded to maybe there being conditions in the motion that was made. I'm just looking what was provided to us as far as, that these conditions to be met. The only thing that I see is it just says that modifications listed in the engineering report, but I don't see the engineering report that was provided. And so I feel like, lack of a better term, this is a legal noose that's just put out the catch-all of all conditions. Boom. We caught everything on every staff report, anything that's possibly out there. So I'm trying to put in my mind anything that was specific as far as trying to quantify what are those checklist items that we're worried about. Does that make sense?
If you read the last line of the motion, it says that it's modifications listed in the engineering report as well as completion of the items listed by the chairman to the staff in a timely manner. So the 5 conditions I talked about were part of my comments during the meeting, and it is the last line of the motion. The motion was approved on condition those things will be taken care of.
Okay, maybe it's
That's
just
why we approved it.
my simple mind's just looking for the bullet points, on the 5 that I would.
Like I listed here, but they're in my comments. And the last line of the motion specifically says the condition of approval is dependent upon those items of my concern being taken care of. As of the night they weren't.
And Scott,
Maybe they're insignificant, but as a professional, that's, you want me to review the different reports. If you don't want to go and review them anymore, that's fine.
Let me refer to Councilman Taylor.
Just real quick. This has been a bit of a pet peeve of mine for some time, so I don't want Kevin or John or anyone else to take offense, or Scott to take offense at this. But so often, this gets pitted as if we vote one way based on our staff or the planning commission, that we are immediately discrediting the other one. That is absolutely not the case. That is not the case. And you've heard me gripe about it before, but I'm not an engineer. I never will be an engineer. I won't even come close to being an engineer. I can step in it and know what I'm stepped in. That's about where it comes to in terms of land situation with me. So, because I go with, say tonight that I go ahead and we vote to pass this, and I go ahead with Scott on this. John, that is not a personal affront to you.
I don't think it's that way.
Okay, good. But Kevin, when you refer to it like that, it's not that way. And so I sit back from a very logical mind and say, okay, I read all the planning commission report, and I read in the packet, and I read where John's questions were brought up, and about the 5-foot hole and the 3-foot water being found in those holes and those different things. I'm not going to be able to understand that, even if I were to sit down with John and you give me great detail. I understand that, wow, so there's groundwater much higher than what we thought there was going to be. But if our professional staff goes through that, people that have forgotten far more than I'll ever know about engineering, and they say, that's good, we're good to go forward, we're comfortable with that, and that's probably where I'm going to go. And it's not because I'm smarter than anybody, it's not because I think any of you are smarter than the other person. I just have to go with the staff that has the most there. The planning commission voted that all the way with those exceptions. And so I want to get away from that. And I'm confident that if the staff and Rebecca, you and Ben, whoever has had to look over this, also the counsel from the mayor, that's where this goes, and it's pretty much an up or down at this point. But it's not a personal affront to the person who is in opposition of this, nor is it ever. It's never dukes up with the planning commission or with the staff. It is absolutely not that. But there's decisions that have to be made. So.
And just so I make it clear, I bring in my professional opinion on it. If you don't want to agree with it, that's up to you. I don't take it personally. But I can just sleep tonight and I throw it to the fact that if it goes the other way, it's off my shoulders. I bring it up and that's all I can do.
Well, we have talked about that in the past, John. You sat exactly where you were sitting and said, well, I'm not going to tell my people, so you're just blowing off what the planning commission says. And that's not the case. It's the exact same situation tonight. We're just trying to make the best decisions we can and keep government moving. And I don't think we're overlooking anything that our professional staff says to us. I think it's approved, it's good to go.
Well, I put my comments in like that, and if the staff overrides it, that's fine. I can sleep well tonight when I did my part to bring it to you, and if you don't want to.
And you certainly have. You've done a great job of doing it.
That's fine.
All right, so I'm going to line up some comments here. First of all, I'm going to hear, let me hear from Councilmember Carroll. The applicant is here. He would like to speak to it as well. And then maybe Patrick does. And so Scott, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I did want to just chip in. I appreciate so much what you said, Councilman Taylor, and really respect it. And I know we as staff never feel that, and we feel very respected and considered. And because I do have such a deep respect also for John and his professional expertise, I don't want anyone to think that I or my staff are just overriding or ignoring him. Some of these things clearly John still feels strongly about, and that matters to me. So I don't say this about all developers, but Mr. Haran and his team have always been very willing to work with us, to talk with us, and I have appreciated working with them, and I do believe that they want to do what's right for the city. So I would ask that as if this is approved tonight, that we still have Mr. Haran and his team work with me to make sure that we get answers to John's questions, that we work together to still resolve those. I still stand by my recommendation that this be approved tonight, that we feel it's ready to go ahead, but I would like to still have them, and I'm convinced that Mr. Hernan will work with us in making sure that we get answers to John's questions, because I do have respect for John and his opinions.
Okay, thank you. All right, Patrick, and then we'll have Councilmember Carroll.
Just to follow up on what John had mentioned about staff and their workload, we are busy, but if it's the council's recommendation to attach conditions to your approval, or whatever you decide to do, we'll get the job done. We'll deal with anything that comes in. That's our role, and don't worry about increasing workload just from what John had followed up on. More than happy to get things done as they need to be.
Okay, all right. Councilmember Carroll?
Okay, Mayor, I have mostly a question that's also sort of a comment. And my question is for Scott. Do any of the concerns that were brought up, are any of them a make or break situation where if there is no resolution to the project, and are those resolutions, would they actually change the plat? That's basically what I'm wondering. Because if they have resolutions that can be worked out, then I'm not as concerned. If they're like, hey, these are something that could actually not ever come to resolution, then I have a little graver concerns, as well as, do they actually change the plat when they make those changes?
In discussing it with my team, we believe that everything that is been discussed can be worked out. And again, that's why we bring it to you with the recommendation that it be moved forward. If that was not the case, we would not be bringing it forward to you, or we would be standing here saying, please vote against this. And I just want to assure you of that if there was ever something that we felt couldn't work out or did material affect the plans, the designs, we would ask you to please vote against it.
And does that change the plat?
No.
So that's kind of my
I
point.
believe it can be done without. the-
Okay, so we're voting on the plat tonight, and I actually, in response to Councilmember Barnes's concern, I do agree we want to have I was about to say incentivization, is that a word? Incentive.
It is now. We just got
Incentive
it.
for the developer, but they, in my opinion, they have inspections and things that they have to pass in order to get any sort of occupancy as well as progression for other construction. So for me, that's all laid out already.
Councilor Carroll, I did hear Patrick whisper in my ear, though, that it's also approval of the site plan tonight. So it's not just the plan.
Oh, okay, so the site plan has those things
Just to
on
make
it.
you
Okay,
aware of it.
Does that bring up the question of 2 or 3 buildings? The site
ours,
plan.
I think ours only had two.
Ours only had 2.
Yeah, because I checked for
There was
that.
discussion about the third.
There is
but-
discussion about that.
But in the thing, it said the developer, so Mike cleared that up, that there was 2. That's what I read in the packet.
Yeah, he
And I
There
thought
was,
we had two.
right, the packet only had 2, but there was 3, it was discussed, and it was 2.
All right, would the applicant want to make a comment? And would you just state your name for the record?
Mike Coran with White Developers. Happy to be here. First, I want to state that this project isn't something that we're just going to build and sell. We're going to move all 3 of our companies from Lehigh into American Fork. So we're going to own these long-term, and our company's going to be here. Regardless of that.
Buildings.
Yeah,
Those buildings.
correct. Those exact buildings. Well, we're only going to be in one.
Okay.
They're big buildings, so. But whether we're going to stay in them or not, we want to build quality projects, whether it's a townhome or a commercial building. And so I appreciate the feedback that we got from Planning Commission, because the last thing we want is an owner of a building to have problems with liquefaction or high groundwater. And so we took those concerns, sent them to our geotech engineer, who revised the report and resubmitted to staff, who reviewed that report. Staff sent that report to, I think it was Taylor Geotech, is that who you guys use?
It's a third party, and of course, put me on the spot, I go back and have it.
So the city has a third-party geotech engineer who reviewed that, came back with 2 questions. Our geotech answered those questions, and we resubmitted it. That's why it took so long, is we've gone round and round and round to make sure that we've addressed the liquefaction. And so I'm not really sure just what information Rebecca has and what has went to Mr. Woofenden. But we've provided, we feel, all the information, and as has been stated, if we haven't provided all the information that we need to provide to make him comfortable, which is going to make me more comfortable as an owner, that our buildings aren't going to have any kind of structural high groundwater issues in the future. So just another note, as it applies to high groundwater, we brought in between 2 and 6 feet of fill above existing grade. So I think we are going to meet or exceed whatever kind of clearances in the code for sensitive lands. And as far as liquefaction, the architect, A. Urbia, had the structural engineer increase the footers and the spot footers to address the liquefaction concerns. So we've tried to address it because we don't want there to be any problems any more than staff, planning commission, want there to be any problems. Any other questions or?
If there's an earthquake, I'll know where to run. Anyway. Okay. Any questions? Any other questions? Okay. Good, robust discussion. Thank you. If there's no questions, I'd entertain a motion.
Mayor, I will move to adopt the ordinance approving the final plat and site plan of the Deer Creek Park subdivision located at 9 West, 1100 South in the PI1 planned industrial zone, and authorize the mayor and council to sign the plat and accept the dedications with instructions to the city recorder to withhold recording the subdivision and publication of the ordinance subject to all conditions identified in the public record associated with the November 17th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion by Councilmember Carroll.
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Hunter.
Just one quick comment. I think she said Deer Creek Park subdivision. It's Deer Park. I think we all say Deer Creek.
Yeah, right, it might have.
It caught me, yeah.
Well, I guess we'll bring our fly rods then, right? Okay, so, all right. Deer Park subdivision, first and second. Okay, I'm going to call for a vote. Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton.
Aye.
Councilmember Hunter. Aye. Councilmember Barnes.
I'm going to vote no just because of the potential for slippery slope with all these things being done at the last minute. It's been a consistent theme of mine as long as I've been in here. I don't personally like information coming in at the last minute, and I've voted against things in the past because of that. That said, I love the project. It's a great looking building. I wish you all the success in the world. I see no reason it won't work, but it's just an old man's idiosyncrasies. How's that for a big word, Scott?
Okay. We'll move on to item number 6, a review and action on an ordinance creating section 13.04.050 of the American Fork City Municipal Code regarding utility services to properties outside of city boundaries. Thanks, Scott.
Mr. Mayor, this is an ordinance that comes in consultation with David and with Sherilyn. Being that water resources are scarce, they are limited. From time to time, we have had different unannexed parcels want to have water service, and felt that it would be best to make sure that we limited water service right now to properties that were in the city, give people the incentive to please annex, come be part of our city if you want to receive the services of the city. And so the Planning Commission unanimously recommended this, and we recommend approval of this tonight as well.
Thank you.
Mayor,
I'll just ask if there's any questions.
The only question I have, this is just water, does not include sewer.
No, I'm sorry, this is utilities. This is all
utilities.
utilities provided by the city. Water, sewer.
All the utilities.
Yeah, correct. And just to clarify, this is also, that's right?
Correct.
Okay, I heard a voice over there, I didn't just
jump in right when you finish.
misspeak, but I was also going to say, just to make sure that it was clear that this is for new services, so anyone that is already on the services of the city, this won't affect them.
And that's what I was going to emphasize.
See that? We're like the bird, you will be assimilated.
So Scott, Ryan's gonna know this one really well. We're Cliff's Nolan down there on, is it 4th East or 3rd East?
460 south and 200 east.
So I think he was still on a septic tank.
There's several homes right there.
Yeah, and that's because there's no city connection of sewer on just like that half block. It's weird, right? And the city, when we were looking at doing a road bond, came in and said, hey, we're gonna put the sewer in if the road bond approves because we need to connect that half block. And it said, there was a city ordinance that said, hey, if there is a city service that comes by you, you have to connect into it. I'm just wondering how that works if we're now saying we're not.
So
Does that make
this would
sense?
still not have any effect on anyone if they're not in the city, they would not connect or be allowed to connect or be required to connect. But if they are in the city, that's a different story. This really only applies to people who are not annexed, and there would just be
annexation directly.
Correct. They would need to annex first, and then we would provide service.
It essentially avoids the issue that you're talking about from happening down the road, where we have somebody who's
That was a nasty situation.
literally nasty. And frankly, if there was a sewer storm line or a water line there, they would have loved to have connected. So, anyway.
Sorry. Just as the person that popped in mind.
Great idea. Great to remember it.
Okay. Any other questions?
Mayor, I'd move to adopt the ordinance if I'm available. Clark, were you saying something?
I was going to make the motion, Ryan, but if you
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, it's right there on the screen.
You know,
I move to adopt the ordinance creating section 13.04.050 of the city code regarding utility services to property outside of city boundaries.
I'll second.
You have a motion by Councilmember Hunter, second by Councilmember Taylor, and I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Barnes?
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll?
Aye.
Councilmember Hunter?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton?
Aye.
Item number 7 is review and action on a resolution approving an agreement with the Utah Department of Transportation regarding traffic signals and access control along US Highway 89 in American Fork.
So, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is an agreement that UDOT contacted me, our contact over there reached out to me and said this is something that they're doing all throughout the cities, throughout the state. Wherever there is a state highway in a city, they want to make sure that these agreements are in place, specifying the locations of the existing signals and then establishing the process for when new signals, if there is any, already to be requested along that corridor, that it sets forth the conditions. We brought forward one of these sometime within the last year or two. I wish I could remember exactly when. To you for 500 East. This is the same agreement, almost the same wording for Highway 89, which really is State Street, then Main Street, then State Street again, as it goes through the city. And so it's, again, establishes those locations and does give a provision that if for some reason we want to request or developer wants to request another one, it's got to go through the process. So it's pretty straightforward, and we recommend approval. Be happy to answer any questions I could.
Mayor, I'd move to approve the cooperative agreement with UDOT, Utah Department of Transportation regarding signal spacing and access control along US Highway 89 in American Fork, and authorize the city to sign said agreement.
Okay. Motion by Councilmember Taylor. Second by Councilmember Barnes. And I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Barnes?
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye.
Councilmember Hunter?
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll?
Aye.
Well, I was very impressed, Scott, with the sheen this evening. It's probably a solid 9 out of 10. This did not sway my vote on anything.
It's a true story. Every time I try to decrease it, I still get it.
That's a solid 9, brother. That's looking really good. If you're going to be bald like Scott. That's what I say.
Do it right.
All right. Item number 8 is a review and action on the appointment of the city attorney. Somebody we rely on. I've called her twice today. So, yeah, and so really appreciate Sherilyn, and I would recommend her to stay on with us and guide us along this city as we grow, so.
Mayor, I'd move to approve Mayor Frost's agreement, your agreement, with the appointment of Sherilyn Egner as the city attorney.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Taylor.
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Shelton. And I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Hunter? Aye. Councilmember Shelton?
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll?
Aye, with gratitude that we have you.
Councilmember Barnes?
Aye, for sure.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye on the fence. It's
Expected.
Okay, item number 9 is a review and action on approval of a contract for civil legal services. Is there any questions? The packet had quite a bit of material, and I guess we could refer to David, now our newly appointed city attorney, to answer questions.
Mayor, I'd move to approve the contract with Hanson Law PC for civil legal services.
Thank you.
I'd second, Mayor.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Taylor, second by Councilmember Hunter, and I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Shelton?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye.
Councilmember Hunter?
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes?
Aye, with just a quick little comment. I had a discussion with another attorney this afternoon. This is basically the same firm we've used for a number of years. If you go back and look, it used to be called Hanson Wright and several other things, but it's still the same basic thing. So if people read documents from 2 different time periods, there could be some confusion there, but it's not. So aye.
We just eliminated the Juab County portion.
course.
Can you let him know that?
I was gonna say, I didn't read that part in there, but I missed that.
And Councilmember Carroll.
Aye.
Okay, item number 10, review and action on approval of a contract for criminal legal services. Again, same firm.
Move to approve, Mayor. Move to approve a contract with Hanson Law PC for criminal legal services.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Hunter, second by Councilmember Tater, and I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Carroll?
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton?
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye.
Councilmember Hunter?
Aye.
Quick comment, Mayor, I didn't bring it up in the consolidated review, but as I did go through there, one thing that was noted is the lopsidedness in revenue to our public safety versus the expenses. And we brought up before doing the justice court. And I, what we look for, I hope that's sometime down the road, maybe that should do an analysis on it, but if we're approving these contracts, hopefully that's top of mind, that might be something that we can look at, especially our courts building. I believe the contract's due this September. And so it'd be nice to have, in the near future, some conversation about possibility of the justice court.
And Mayor, if I could, I've spoken with David about that. We are working on putting together kind of a little memo for council of pros and cons, as well as some conversation points with regard to courts building and some things we've been working through on that.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, item number 11. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Councilmember Barnes,
Second.
second by Councilmember Hunter. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Thank you very much.